This is Tiffany Rosier, the host of the Afros and Knives podcast. We use the Anchor podcasting app to create and distribute the show. Creating a podcast on Anchor is effortless. It allows you to record a high-quality podcast and distribute it everywhere, including Google Podcast and Apple Podcast. They distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. No fancy equipment or podcasting experience is necessary, and it's 100% free. As long as you have a story to tell, Anchor is the platform to use. Share your story through audio using the Anchor app for Android, iPhone, or your desktop. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Welcome back to the Afros and Knives podcast, the interview series featuring Black women working and leading in food and beverage, food media, food science, food justice, and hospitality. My name is Tiffany, and in this episode, I speak with Leigh-Ann Martin, a chef and food blogger based in New York, and her recipes blend her Trinidadian heritage and city life and provides tools to create delicious meals artfully designed and portioned to suit solo dining. We are in the height of the holiday season, and most winter holidays are already happening. Cookbooks are a great last-minute gift, and they are excellent presents for the new year. For me, New Year's is my favorite holiday, and so a gift exchange just feels right at the end of the year, and specifically gifts that can help people remember their future goals, remind them to set new goals, and also support the new goals. So learning how to cook, becoming a better cook, learning new recipes, learning new techniques, getting new tools, learning about new cuisines, all of those are incredible goals for 2021. Learning a new cuisine can absolutely introduce you to flavors and ingredients you've never cooked with before, and it also introduces you to the culture. It's a great gateway to start conversations, to ask questions, and just to learn about, something else and somebody else in a different community, a different nation, of course, overall, a different culture. 10 Speed Press offered up some incredible gems this year. Vegetable Kingdom by Brian Terry. That comes complete with a tool and pantry guide and a really dope soundtrack that's also available on Spotify under Vegetable Kingdom. And then there's Indy's Kitchen by Howard Hassan and Julie Turshen. This cookbook goes beyond just really incredible recipes with fantastic flavor profiles. It captures all of the love and warmth that you remember from sitting in your own grandmother's kitchen. So it loves on and it honors the rich culinary contributions of the women living in the 8 African countries that touch the Indian Ocean. I'm not sure if everybody can name all 8 countries, but it's definitely something to add to your New Year's goal list. Let's see. And then there's Jubilee, of course, by Tony Martin. There was a really fantastic Instagram live chat on the Black Food Folks Instagram with Tony Martin today. And this book is just a celebration of the unsung masters of American cooking and a collection of recipes from 2 centuries of African American cooks. So it's disruptive, it's respectful, it's vibrant, it's energetic, it's all of the things you want in a book about food, highlighting really incredible recipes. So definitely add some cookbooks to your giving list this year or this season. And it's not too late. You still got time, and definitely, top of the year, New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, through the month of January, it's a great way to start the year off by buying yourself a cookbook and then getting one for a friend. This season of the Afros and Knives podcast is sponsored by 10 Speed Press and is made possible through the generous contributions season 4. Thank you to Talente and Black Food Folks for their generosity in awarding the show a $10,000 grant, which brings me to about 60% of the $10,000 goal. Funding currently sits at $6,810, and so we're getting so much closer. We're actually less than $4,000 to go. So if you have a couple of extra bucks from the holidays, that would be awesome. So because I still want to hire bring in a social media manager. I still want to bring in a business manager. So there's a couple other things on the goal list to check off. If you want to make a pledge to the fundraiser, you can go directly to the website. It gives you all the options there. You can also make a donation directly through Venmo, PayPal, or the fundraising site, which is gogetfunding.com/Afros and Knives. And again, you find all of that on the Afros and Knives website, which is afrosandknives.com. If you enjoy listening to the podcast and you don't have the monetary resources, but you want to make sure people know about the show and are listening and supporting, you can be sure to share an episode that you love, download, definitely subscribe. And those downloads and subscribing actions are so vital to the growth of a podcast. To see us be found on the Apple Podcast recommendations, to see us show up in the Fresh Finds on Spotify, it just to get us higher up in the rankings for new shows that people should be listening to. You have to download, you have to subscribe, and definitely leave a comment or rate the show so people can get eyes on the show and we can continue to share these stories and highlight these women in larger and larger arenas. So I'd absolutely, of course, love to hear your feedback. So definitely drop a comment directly on the website on an episode page, or again, review the show on Apple Podcast, rate the show on Spotify. So there's just a lot of options. Let's see. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter so you can stay up to date on new guests, on season 4 guests that are coming up, and all of the new stuff that I'm introducing next season. So if you want to know more about that, definitely subscribe to the newsletter. And then during the season, it'll let you know who's coming up, what kind of new merch is coming out. So just all kinds of stuff. So definitely get on to the newsletter. And so I will not hold you any longer. Let's get into this interview.
Hi, my name is Leigh-Ann Martin. I am born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm coming up on my 14th year, my anniversary of moving to the US. It's on the 28th of September. Before that, I had 21 glorious years of living in my mother's house, i.e. not paying rent. And, going to school in Trinidad was fun. I was going to school for accounting. I moved to the US in the fall of 2006. And I still had still continued having a professional career in finance back in those days. And then after the market crashed, I found really interesting ways to kind of figure out how to, still have a career, that type of thing. And then I started getting newsletters from the culinary school in New York because I wanted to find out more information about it. I think I was getting newsletters from ICE for a good year and a half or 2 years or something like that before I made the jump and get formal training for cooking. So I started cooking for my family in Trinidad, I want to say around 10, 11 years old. It wasn't where, I was the girl of the house, so I had to cook. It was more of Ma was working shift. So my big brother would cook sometimes, and then everyone had to learn to, fend for themselves, right, in Trinidad, in my mother's house. So I was around that age when I first picked up my pot spoon and I started cooking. It was cooking for a small group. It was for 4 of us, my mom, my 2 brothers, and myself. As I got older, I started cooking for my grandmother. In addition to 4 of us, started cooking for my grandmother when she became bedridden. And it was fun, my mom, she used to be a domestic worker before she went into working at the mess hall in the oil company in Trinidad. So she's always kind of known, table setting and etiquette and all these things, and how to make a roux and how to make a bechamel. And so early on she would try out these type of techniques at home for us. So when she went to work for the mess in the mess hall in Trinidad on a Sunday, she wouldn't cook. She would be like, this is her off day, so I'd be the one cooking in the kitchen. But then in the week she made it really fun because she would say, Leigh, what we cooking? And we would start, working on a list of things, a menu. Saturday we'll go to the market. She'll be like, okay, so this is the plan. We're going to get this first, and this, then this, then this. So by hour and a half, we done coming home already. And on a Sunday, we would have breakfast, and she would say, okay, so meat is seasoned, this is prep, this is good. From you have this time to prep, to, small prep, to cook, to present. Go. And it was really fun. It was really fun because, and mind you, I'm telling you like a really sexy version, right? Because in she saying I had all these things to do, I also had to bathe the dog, wash my hair, all of that before 12 o'clock, before food was up.
Wow.
Yeah, and but that's just how we roll, Even now, fast forward to me living hashtag single life cooking in New Jersey, that's how I roll. I'm constantly looking at what's in stock, what do I have in the cupboard, before I even make it to the grocery store. I'm like, okay, what do I have? That type of thing. Things are planned out because that's how I've been trained ever since didn't even hit puberty.
Wow.
So that's really where it started. And then fast forward to culinary school was interesting. I felt like culinary school was, I was a woman, sorry, from Trinidad coming into culinary school. I thought that my other classmates knew more than me, so I would constantly test myself. I would go into the grocery stores and like walk down the aisles and name herbs and, be the annoying person talking to the butchers and that type of thing. Also, I realized I didn't have a culinary resume. And couple of the first conversations we had with our chef instructor was the life of a chef and like the real nitty gritties of it, right? So I started working on a culinary resume. So I think like the second or third week into me being in culinary school, I started volunteering with the James Beard House. And then back in those days, I was a part of this really cool book club in Brooklyn where one of the ladies knew one of the directors at the Bowery Residence Committee downtown in the city. And they really helped with, getting homeless people off the streets, making sure they had a place to live, that type of thing. So I, met with the director and I pretty much pitched to them, a healthy, on the low kind of cooking demo for the elderly residents at the home. So I used to do that once a week. It was on a budget. We didn't complicate stuff. We would do like broccoli soup with no cream and no cheese and everything like that, because these are, they were elderly people on a budget. So I wanted for them to know how to live and how to eat and how to, you didn't need all these heavy rich creams, nor did you need to buy these things to have a good, decent meal, right?
Right.
So we did things like that. Did things like, how to, use rotisserie chicken to, make something, for the week, that type of thing. So I started on my culinary resume. And it's interesting because I've never saw myself going in the path of other people. I'm always thinking about, okay, so what do I want to do? And that is what I wanted to do at that time. I wanted to volunteer my services at the Beard House, and I wanted to volunteer with the Bowery Residence Committee because I wanted to learn how to instruct. I wanted to learn how to teach. I wanted to learn those things. For me, it was just kind of just pulling shit together. Just like the more shit that I had on the resume was the better, right?
Right.
And then culinary school was great, it was one of those things where I paid for it myself, so it had to work.
I understand that completely. Mm-hmm.
um, and then, but this was me always having, while going to culinary school, I was having a part-time job. I remember at that job specifically, one of my coworkers, who is now one of my besties, she would cover for me. I would come in late because I was working two jobs. I was going to culinary school, and then I was volunteering, and I was doing all these other things. And then there was many a times like I would be sleeping at my desk.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
but they would all cover for me because when I was in culinary school, I used to bring so much shit for them.
There was a happy exchange.
It was such a happy exchange. But the other thing too is that that job was kind of like one of the stepping stone jobs, so to speak. So everyone there was either going to school or understood some of the struggles that we all were having. So we all really came together. I remember at that job, in particular, one of my co-workers, who's again one of my besties now, we would go to Chinatown. She is from Singapore. So she'd take me to Chinatown and she'd translate and we'd buy all these things and she'd introduce me to ingredients. That was the first time I saw black chicken. It was so great. I don't know what we did when the day come, honestly, because I felt like all we did was, or it felt like all we did was and we were also in fashion district. So like it was I don't know what the hell we did when the day come, honestly, but that job really gave me the time and the brain space to focus on culinary school. And of course, after culinary school, you had in externships, that type of thing. I ended up kind of working at the restaurant that I did my externship with. And I want to say, although I didn't have representation through a black woman in leadership, I did have representation with two sous chefs being black at the restaurant, as well as another chef who was a pastry chef there who was a black female. So there was representation when I started my externship. And still now I could still call on them for any type of, mentoring or any advice or anything like that. But during all of this, I've always had a full-time job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then I made a shift and I went into, I know I'm giving you like a very kind of loopy story, but I went into public accounting and I was an assistant at one of the top accounting firms. And that job was really, really demanding. It was demanding because of the position and what I wanted, because I liked it. And that is when I kind of took a break from cooking professionally. But then I normally go home to Trinidad every year for Christmas. And I use that time to figure out goals, to decompress, that type of thing. And I kid you not, it was Boxing Day or something like that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start blogging. And that was the time we were using, what was the site we were using for blogging back then?
Ooh, what is it? Not a blogger.
It was oh my God, what was the site we were using? And
Blogspot.
it was such a cool site we were using back then. And I was doing that. And then
Okay.
I made it official and I went into WordPress and I did everything like unboxing night or something. I said, you know what? This is it. This is what I'm going to do. This is the one of the goals for this year for me to make sure that I, work on the craft and I share my stories and that type of thing. And that's really how I started blogging. Blogging in the earliest was very difficult for me because I did not want to share anything about myself.
Same.
It was very hard. I remember for me to write my bio, I would speak to my friend and I would cry. And I was like, I do not want people to know this about myself. I did not want to do it. And I don't know, I probably took the stick out my ass and, everything kind of, no, I can't stop talking. But it was difficult because I wanted to choose what I wanted to share, and that's what it wasn't really the most genuine way to go about it, especially if I wanted to gain relatability and that type of thing. So blogging in the beginning was pretty difficult, but it was also it was good for me to, work on recipes and work on measurements and that type of thing. And because I've always had a career in finance and accounting and that type of thing, it was easy for me to kind of work on a schedule, really stick to the schedule as well too. I was taking pictures with my phones and I know the sun would be up at this and this time. So everything was planned. And yeah, so that part of my life I have absolutely no problem with. But again, people might think that's rigid, but I think having that type of organization in my life was fun. I liked the process. It was great. And then, I was doing things here and there. But I think my career and my life as a chef really took flight when I turned 30. And that was 5 years ago. And I felt like I turned 30 and I just got my life. And I started to really kind of put the post-its up on the wall and say, you could do this. This is what you're going to do. And really go back to the person I was when I was in culinary school, of just walking my own road and not looking to other people's paths. So I am being Trinidadian right now, where I'm not pronouncing like my THs, and not following other people's paths and stuff like that. So I just did me. So when I turned 30, something clicked and I was like, aha, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep on blogging, but this is the vibe. This is where I see myself. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start back traveling. I'm going to go to these Caribbean islands and understand what makes them so unique, because Caribbean food does not have a blueprint because of slavery, because of all these things. Every
Right.
island have their own thing. All of we just cook curry, okay, fine, but everybody makes it different. And I just wanted to kind of understand that, learn about it, highlight it, because I have relation to Trinidadian food. And as much as I still want to cook Trinidadian food for people, to highlight Trinidadian food at my dinners, I felt I owed it to myself. I owed it to people in the Caribbean. I owed it to my readers of my blog to understand, to highlight, to big up the Caribbean. So I started with some of the English Caribbean islands, starting with St. Lucia, starting with Barbados, Trinidad, of course, and then Grenada, and then I branched off to Martinique, but that was very specific because I wanted to get a tiny. I wanted to get like my palate wet for, rums out there and rum agricole out there and that type of thing. So that was really sexy. That was really good. So with the travel came, and please interrupt me because I could go on and on.
That's the point. That's the point. No, you're
You
fine.
know.
I am just because I'm just taking it all in and listening through. Because usually I'm like, oh, I have a question about that, and then you turn around and answer it. So you are perfectly fine
Okay.
right now. You're good.
Okay. So it started off with that. So St. Lucia really stood out for me because of what they were doing with their agriculture and the gap they were closing between the farming and the hotels, and how they were using technology to fill this gap. So when I
Mm,
went to St. Lucia, they had this program called it was a virtual agriculture clearinghouse, where the restaurants were communicating directly with farmers through WhatsApp. So they weren't really leaning too heavy. They were trying not to, lean heavily on the imports, but
great.
try to really push local that way. And then, for instance, if your supplier is a farmer from the north and he didn't have something, you could reach out to a farmer from the south or something like that. So it was really interesting. And then the landscape of St. Lucia reminded me of Trinidad. It's very hilly, that type of thing. In order for me to go to St. Lucia, I
Hmm.
pitched the idea to the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association for me to
Oh,
come on
okay.
board, for me to kind of shadow them, for me to write about it, that type of thing. So that was really, really cool because they were like, I think they were like, okay. Because it really, but you know what I did? I did like what anyone else did, right? I worked my contacts,
Right.
and one thing led to the other, one person led to the other, and then I ended up in St. Lucia. It was really, really great. As much as, on Twitter, I like to say I'm bougie, all that bullshit. When I go home and I think of the Caribbean, so when I go home, I'm going to jump in a maxi. I'm taking public transportation.
Right.
I got my sneakers on. I have my cap on. I'm a road warrior. It was great. So when I reached to St. Lucia, I jumped in a maxi and I went to the grocery store and I bought stuff and I jumped in a maxi and I came back up and it was good. And then I met with the team from the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Association, and they were polished and they were ready for me and they had everything set. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to really shadow them. And in shadowing them meant closely working with the team, from with the virtual agricultural clearing association. And that meant going to farms and speaking to farmers and seeing how the communications were going and seeing the crops, simultaneously getting crops and getting supplies for the quarterfinals, for their setting their national culinary team together to do this, Caribbean event. So I was a judge there and everything. So it was very, very cool. Really,
Ooh,
really cool
nice.
stuff. So with all that cool stuff, I'm going to totally bypass how I got totally wasted in this tiny fishing village, wind down to the ground, wind up, wind down. It was a sight. So I'll totally bypass that. Yeah, so that was really good. And then it just kind of had me hungry for more. And I would get questions from people about saying, why not start with Trinidad? And I said to myself, these islands have so much to offer. And unfortunately, some of the bigger islands, because how they're marketed to the world,
Yeah.
they get more of the limelight, which is fine. However, it has so much creativity and so much talent and so much really good thought process that's going on with the people in these islands. I really wanted to not focus on that, but explore that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, and I really had to push myself with everything. I always look at when people say, this one said I couldn't do it and that one said I couldn't do it. And I try to recollect to see if anyone has ever told me I couldn't do anything. And the things that I come up with is, even if they told me I couldn't do something, I probably didn't even hear them. I think I battle with doubting myself. You
Yeah.
know what I'm
Oh, yeah.
saying?
Oh,
Doubting
yeah.
myself and kind of, coming out, guns a blazing, and then, retreating. And then I'm like, oh, I'm scared, that type of thing. So after that St. Lucia, where I just busted out of the walls and I was like, I'm going to do this. I just felt like, sky was the limit from there. And that's really where the career started taking off. And again, I've always ever had a full-time job with everything. So after that, it's still blogging, and then I started going into more of the pop-up dinners and everything.
Right.
And then, along the way, you meet all these really cool, interesting people in the industry and forge relationships with, which was cool because that was another thing that I didn't really have coming from public accounting. I felt like I only ever knew accountants and lawyers and people in either my company or in other companies that did the same thing, right?
Right.
So forging relationships and going to these events was also big, and networking was also very big for me because I felt like I was still working on my culinary resume.
Mm.
And then I don't know. Tell me a question. Ask me a question.
I'm starting to lose the timeline. Well, because I was thinking through, like, after looking at, like, you're reading through your blogs and, or your blog posts, and then looking at the website and kind of just, when people, I understand that idea of, like, not wanting to, like, blog because, like, you just don't want to offer that much of yourself to the public. And,
Mm-hmm.
like, I've always struggled. I'm still terribly disciplined at it. And Plus, it's that idea of like, well, what do people really want to hear about? Like, why do you like who is reading this? Like, there's still an element of kind of the ridiculous to me, for lack of a better word, where I'm like, no one is going to read this. Who is going to come here and read this? Why would this be important to somebody? But when I read other people's stuff, and it it occurs to me like each time that there is because you put a small piece of yourself into all of your work, like you show up everywhere. Also, your DNA is all over whatever you produce. What is it that you want people to learn or take away when they come to your blog or when they encounter your brand, about who you are and what's important to you? And, because I like reading a bio or kind of going through someone's like CV or resume just doesn't give you too much. It gives you like what they've done and possibly what they produced in the world so far. But, a blog is a really different space because you can explore a little bit more and you can kind of hear that person's voice in the world and see how they move through the world. I noticed like the blog is a mix of like recipes and then like exploration and like following your curiosity and then reporting back on that. Have you, what are your thoughts about where you want to take your writing work and like your writing career? Is that something you planned on expanding, or are you kind of looking at where we are and what opportunities to pivot and, has anything new kind of popped up in your space since we've been on, the journey of COVID-19 and civil unrest and all the other things? What do you, because I remember turning 30 and that's when I decided to be a chef. So I understand that kind of transformative moment. And so from that point, it's kind of like, okay, where do I go? Because I did the same thing. I didn't take any really traditional routes, culinary wise. My trajectory was really unique and on purpose and purposefully unique. But yeah, at this point, like, where do you see that, like, specifically like the blog space? Because I love the idea of like someone who can offer readers opportunity to deep dive into like island culture and Caribbean culture and like all of those islands. And because there's so much more there. There's so much more depth there than people understand or know, because they are only able to really engage with the islands through tourism.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're not able to really understand what it's like to, be born and raised and live a life and, grow a family or, have your identity directly attached to being a resident. And so, like, do you see your blog or your work kind of pivoting a bit even heavier into that space?
Sure. So I'm going to go back and then come forward, because what you said was like, exactly some of the things that I've thought about, thinking about, have put into practice already. So when it comes to blogging back then, when I was having such a hard time in sharing, parts of myself, I focused more on the recipes, where the parts of myself that I wanted to share, I could have controlled, what I ate on a Sunday morning, what I ate on a Thursday, I like chocolate chip cookies, things like that. But now looking back, well, not looking back, now I feel way more comfortable writing. I'm writing about myself, where that has kind of pushed the envelope to, last year having 2 published articles. And that made me really, really happy to see my stories out there. It was one of those things, not necessarily about would people read it, but more of kind of like, nah, people need to read this because it's my perspective. It's fresh. It's new. People are going to get it. Especially, I wanted to really showcase, the calmness, the surrealness, the bacchanal, the food, the culture, the flavor, the heat, everything through the lens of Caribbean life. And that was amazing. So because of last year, I said that, and last year, 2018-19, I started my dinner series called A Table for Four, where I had a dinner series out of my home that, it's cute to say that my dining table could only seat 4, but ever since I was 10 years old, I was cooking for 4 people. So I'm very comfortable at that capacity. And it was really nice for people I wanted to invite my diners to come and see, where I cook, where I blog, how I vibe, that type of thing. I wanted it sexy and friendly. I didn't want the rush. I wanted it to be curated, where I was able to kind of pluck people from certain, whomever reached out to me or whoever I reached out to make the conversation kind of sway in a different direction, that type of thing. So that was really, really cool. After I did, those 2 published articles last year, I felt like I wanted to kind of go in that direction. I felt like, this voice was something that I could, and everything was working together. It's not like if one of the goals was so far left that it was just not working with like my brand or, the goal that I had or anything like that, right? So for the past 2 years, I was doing my pop-up dinners, and in the fall of 2019, I started a new job, a
Okay.
new full-time job.
Okay.
And with starting the new job, but even before that, because at the beginning of the year, because my brain is never shuts off. So in 2019, the end of 2018, I resigned my full-time job because I wanted to concentrate more on traveling. And I was pretty checked out of corporate America, honestly. But because I'm goal oriented and structured, I told myself in the fall, I need to have a full time job, regardless of it being in full time in food and beverage or full time in corporate America.
Mm,
Um, so with the beginning part of the year, I traveled a lot, trying to figure things out. Last year was one of those years where it was very new. I've never experienced anything like it. Um, and it was fun. It was tricky. It was anxiety forming, but it had its rewards. And with one of the rewards came me being able to write these 2 articles and have it be published. And I'm really excited. I'm really happy about them. But because of me being goal oriented, even before the end of the year last year, I said I wanted to pivot and do more professional writing
mm,
this year. And I had pitched some stuff, but honestly, COVID, and I think, my mom kind of like low key yelled at me for this, where I kind of allowed COVID to kind of run my life.
I
And
understand that.
you know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't have to be in the office or in a location to write. I could have written from the house like what I've always done, but I just
Right.
really wasn't in the brains. I wasn't in that space to
Right.
write.
Right.
And I just shut off.
Oh, I understand that life.
Yeah,
I do.
I just really shut off. So I felt like I celebrated a birthday in August, and I think after my birthday, it was one of those kind of transitional periods, like I'm sure other people go through, where I'm like, aha, I think I've gotten my life again.
It's like, I think I got my mojo back.
I think
This
I
is
have my
great.
mojo back, and I
Yeah.
think I'm I'm getting the vibe now. So I'm getting my juices flowing. I'm seeing things. I'm feeling things. I'm tasting things. I'm remembering things. I'm starting to write them down. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's
Oh,
I. I kind of like the writing thing. I'm in no way, a professional food writer. Like big up to all, because I I constantly ask myself, I'm just like, where are people getting the energy?
yeah, it's true. It's true. It's like, how are you staying inspired and like curious and
I'm for the first couple months, I'm still not inspired. What?
right, right. It's,
March, April, May, June, I was not
it's
inspired.
it's super challenging, and it's, like when you look at other writers who are really just kind of pumping out more,
Yes.
who always have new content up, who are always kind of thinking in a really fresh space. And like when I look at it, and I'm like, I've had a few articles I've been able to like write and submit that have been published, and it's been great. But it's just like, oh, I mean, and I absolutely understand like not being in the headspace to like create,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
not having the bandwidth to write, because you're just like,
Mhm.
I'm in a low energy cycle. I just thought people should know. I might
That's
I
it.
might rally at some point here, but not right now. To see people, continue just to kind of just persist and produce really beautiful work, and put some really beautiful writing out there. I absolutely understand. Like I marvel at it most of the time.
It was definitely, because I was going to say it's not low energy, but it was definitely low energy because, I live by myself, and I had to show up for the 9 to 5. I had to do all these things, and I didn't know how to show up for myself in a pandemic, like how do I put on the put on the calendar, because we live by calendars. How do
Yeah,
I put on the calendar I have to write, or how do I tell myself I have to write when all I have is myself in this apartment.
exactly.
It was challenging. It still is challenging, but you know what helped me? Just opening my mouth and being like, I need help. I need to talk. I have this idea. I want to do this, but I'm afraid. What am I afraid of? I don't know, but I feel that way. Where is that coming from? And I just had to open up my mouth and talk and express myself to, some people that I could really trust, that they would not give me recommendations or advice based on our relationship, but they would give me advice based on, being in like a slump and understanding the need to come out of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's a handful of there's a couple of conversations I've had over the last few weeks
Yeah.
where, like recognizing like where I am and just kind of going, I am having a hard, I was talking to a friend and I was like, I'm having a hard time, rallying right
Mm-hmm.
now and
Mm-hmm.
trying and finding kind of a bounce back and to, like feeling like myself and feeling normal and feeling creative and all of
Yeah.
those things. And like, it's hard. You feel like you can't access, whatever that is at the moment. And you're just trying to figure out how I can get access to that again. And it's just like, okay, how much self-care and
Right.
meditating and all the
Right.
other things do I need to do in order to kind of return to like myself and get like
Right.
recentered and regrounded. And, like it occurred to me last week, like, wait, well, you know what? If getting to this place was a process, so getting
Mm-hmm.
out of this space would be a process as well.
Right.
So like each day, it's just like, okay, if I can accomplish these handful of things today and not, because it's so easy to like kind of put things on a back burner or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
procrastinate on some other things in order to preserve the energy you do have. And it's just like, you realize like the more you do that, the harder it is to kind of crawl out of that space. So it's just really been a matter of like taking each day and going, okay, what else can I do? What else can I, what small thing can I produce or create today?
And the other thing that I had to, kind of tell myself is I've had some big wins. So if for these couple of months I don't, it's okay. I've had some big wins in my life. I've contributed to big wins in my friends' lives, in some of my acquaintances' lives. I make my boss look good. I make my boss look good every day. So I felt like me telling myself that, yo, relax. Like if you don't come up with a word for 6 months, you're fine. You know what I'm saying? I think for me, that's a part
Yeah.
of the self-care, because me being hard on myself every weekend or hard on myself on every Wednesday when I said I was going to write and I haven't written anything, wasn't doing anything for my anxiety, wasn't doing anything for the way I thought about myself or how I thought about the process. So that really helped with me, because in all actuality, Tiffany, like I've had some good wins in my life from 30 to now 35. I've accomplished a lot. I was able to really rally and be a sister friend. I'm a no nonsense type of person. I like to think that people appreciate the no nonsense ness about me, and I live a good life. So I say, you know what, Leigh-Ann, relax yourself.
It's true. It's like, I'm gonna stop being so hard on myself
Like,
about
stop
this.
being so hard on yourself. But with me not being hard on myself really kind of opened the gateway for me to just have conversation with people. Just have
Wonderful.
conversation with people about, what the industry is going to look like, the loopholes, something that could be better. It had me having conversations with my mother that we've never had those conversations before. And this is my very Trini mother. We've spoken
Wow.
about voting and voting party and racism. We've even spoken about, we always speak about like, the LGBTQ community, but we really kind of got in depth with that. And we also spoke about abortion. And I've never had that conversation with my mom.
I love that. I love it. It's like, oh, okay, this, that was one of the harder things to just like remain focused on, like especially right around March and April
Mm-hmm,
when
mm-hmm.
things started to like shut down. it was okay, what opportunities are there? What am I, how can I keep my eyes focused on possibilities
Yeah.
and not so much, the loss, because there's been so much of it this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you can so you can stay hopeful. So you can like remember like this is not going to be forever.
Yes.
And when we get to the other side of it, like I want to be prepared with,
Yeah.
whatever creativity or ideas have come to me over this time. I want to be prepared to take action on them.
Mm-hmm.
And then one thing I'm always curious about when people are kind of, either a hold pattern or a pause in life at the moment is like, what things are you currently curious about? What things make you excited about like that you're looking into the future that you're really excited about because like, okay, once they let us out the house again, we can go do these things.
Yeah.
But like, what things are making you excited about the food industry that you've seen? What is making you curious? Is there any food styles, food trends, recipes, cookbooks, like things like that have kind of come into the space this year that were, pleasant surprises for you that you kind of were like, oh, this, was not something I expected to either excite me or move me or make me curious.
Right.
And, it's just something you want to explore more of.
Right. So I think what's been going on in food media is giving, if you don't lead a way for yourself with the opportunities that's been, presenting itself within food media, then that's probably not for you. And I've been really been interested in how it's been forming itself, post, what's been going on in food media. We're just going to leave it there. And because I want to write more, I've just been kind of figuring out and understanding and being comfortable with the type of writing style that I want to write in. So last week, there was this literary fest. It's called the Bocas Literary Fest, and it's also Trinidad, and everything was virtual. And I read one of my colleagues, which I would really like for him to be a friend, more like a mentor, really. He sent me one of these. They have an ebook that came out with the literary festival. And it was kind of like this kind of Caribbean futuristic. It was just like 100 pages of like short stories, and it was really cool. And it was less of fantasy and spirituality mixed into future, like an Afrofuturism books, like some of the Afrofuturism books, and more about the practicalities around the benefits of literally using the things that we have and our talents on living on an island in the future. And that's kind of because I love fiction books. I think I write in that form sometimes. And just kind of understanding the type of writing that I would like to do, obviously incorporating food, obviously incorporating some of the things that I've lived through and, things that I reminisce about and kind of things that are looking forward. I also love food when you're moving forward but looking back. So I've just been playing around with, some styles that I would like to write and that type of thing. And I've been wanting to go to Belize for forever.
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Because, they also have this very rich Afro-Belizean history and food and everything. So I just bought a Belizean cookbook called Lick Your Finger. I bought it from, I'm going to botch it. I hope I don't. It's a bookshop. It's an online bookshop from the Brooklyn Caribbean Literary Festival.
Okay.
I really like them. They had their first year last year. They had a second year of it this year. But their bookshop really gives an insight to Caribbean authors and that type of thing. And that's what I need. So I'm really looking forward to when that gets delivered. And then
she's like, go ahead and deliver my mail, please.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to whenever that gets delivered. It is coming from a local bookstore, so it may take a little while because, support local, the big bookstores and the big online, they don't need my money, right? So support local.
Exactly.
And then culturally, so I made my first trip to Kent, to the continent this year. I went to Nairobi, and I don't think I've expressed to people how giddy I still am from actually landing on the continent. Like I was in Africa. I think that is such a big thing for me to see. I was supposed to make 2 more trips out there this year, but, the situation. So for a very long time, I've been very in love with South African culture and understanding the language, and which is still not, it's still very foreign to me, but I so need to go out there, and I want to know, and I want to see, and I want to smell, and I want to get so consumed with their food. That is like, as this COVID thing finish and we could travel, I am going to South Africa.
Oh, I've been exploring visiting options as well as relocation options.
Oh, well, yes, because you and I did speak about that in an IG chat. And I did message the Senegalese embassy because something gotta give.
Yeah, I just feel like sometimes it's like, you know what, life is already challenging enough. Why would I stay someplace where I'm obviously not welcome? And of
Not
course,
obviously, girl, we ain't.
is we just not welcome. And there are plenty. I've heard all the arguments like, well, it's not great anywhere either, and like y'all stop it. That is, it's so far from the point. And to be unwelcome in a place because of something you didn't decide on and don't control is really different than feeling unwelcome in a space for something you did choose. And you're like, well, I chose a lifestyle, or I chose a job or an occupation or whatever. I weighed the opposition, and I understand what it will be like to live this way. Because because even in that regard, like, well, I can always change jobs, I can change vocations, I can change neighborhoods. But when you are in your skin, and it's not something you can make a change on, it's like, to be unwelcome, for your skin color to be weaponized against you is really different than feeling unwelcome in a space because you happen to be the local school teacher and people don't like education. Yes. Like, that's not the same. So for me, I'm always like, I've heard the excuses or the arguments against, well, you're not going to get the same whatever service, your taxes are going to be high. And I'm like, yeah, but what are my taxes paying for here? Yeah. My taxes aren't low here. It's not like I'm paying, 2%. I'm still paying 35% personal income tax here. So it's not like it's a low income tax bill. But what am I getting in return? So if I end up paying 45% of my income to a government, and they provide me with free education, free healthcare, better social services and things like that, then like, what's the complaint?
Yes, so but Tiffany, why not? Why not try to live somewhere else? Like, why not?
Exactly. I'm just like, so like, if my quality of life and like living in a different place is what I want to do, then I don't feel the need to justify or explain that to anyone. Like, this is not the only country in the world. Like, it's just, it's funny. A friend of mine wrote a piece on Medium and talked about how there is this kind of, I'm an American, so I don't have to apologize for anything attitude that is like just increasingly pervasive. And it just shows itself in so many places, specifically like police brutality. And it's like, well, I'm an American. I don't have to apologize for my behavior or my beliefs because I'm an American. And I'm like, what does that even mean though? You're a non-country.
That is an opinion from, we're just going to say that there are certain biases that people live by that is not educated.
Exactly. Those are the opinions of people who don't read. I'm just going to put it out there.
But not only that, I feel like you don't have to apologize. That just screams classism and low-key like xenophobia.
It's so true. It's just like, that shows so much more about your character than it does my choices. Yeah. So like, it's okay. I mean, and for me, it's the one thing I think I will take away from 2020 the most. And it's, always a lesson I've had in the back of my mind, but it seems to be plenty of examples on what happens when you don't, is this idea of just because you think it doesn't mean you have to say it.
Correct.
Opinions are cheap. They're a commodity. Everybody has them. They have multiple opinions. So like, just because you think about it doesn't mean you have to say it. And more so, it doesn't mean that it's a fact or a truth or a law or anything that somebody else has to abide by. But there is like that prevalent idea that, well, it's my opinion, so it must be important. And I'm like, I am so sorry to inform you, but it is not.
And that is, you know, for those opinions are the reasons why you have to put an alert for people to, you know, kind of know where you're getting your information from and only reference credible sources, because people are taking these opinion pieces as Bible and thinking that I should be thinking like that, or I should be living like that, when, you know, if people would just make some decisions on their own and read and educate themselves, it would be totally different. My friend said she's not built for war. I am not built for war, Tiffany. I am not. That's just not my ministry. That's not how I want to see myself in the world. I like to use my voice, my position, my brain in a way that I could sleep at night for the betterment of my people, for the betterment of for myself, to make sure that, you know, I'm still working on legacy, that type of thing. You know what I'm saying? But when people are out here saying some fuck shit, I'm just not about that life. I'm
I
just
don't
not about
suffer
it.
fools. I don't have time for like the foolishness and the bullshittery that I don't. That's not my platform. And I at some point I just disengage. I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to let you continue to use my time, and because it's valuable and it should call. And I'm gonna start charging you if you keep wasting it. And
Tiffany,
it's
you
you know
understand how precious and valuable time is?
I mean, you don't get it back. So, like, why would I let you continue to abscond with 5 or 10 minutes of my day being stupid? I don't do
Yeah.
that.
So, and you know, for the most part, I still have to remember that, and I have a hard time with this, of understanding who's in the room with you, because you don't want to be caught not, you know, blindsided with bullshit, right? But it's really hard. But you know, disengaging with it is healthy as well too. But I feel like I am less focused on the bullshit and more focused on, okay, so what am I going to do in this struggle? How am I going to navigate in this world? If I am, you know, logging in to my laptop for my 9 to 5, how I'm going to make changes on the 9 to 5? How am I going to, you know, be impactful so we diversify? What does diversity mean? What are the measures we are taking? What are the behaviors we have to change? What are the languages we have to start using? So that's how I'm using my voice. I am not using my voice to engage in bullshit, because at this stage in my life, I want to, if at the end of 2020, I could say, okay, I didn't lose a pound and I didn't write anything, I could at least say I used my voice for X, Y, and Z, instead of saying, well, this person made me cry, or that person hurt my feelings, or some fuck shit like that. I ain't got
Oh,
time for that, Tiffany.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm just like I want to be positioned and poised for like the next thing, and if I waste time with the foolishness, then
Yeah,
I can't do that. And
yeah,
it's just like I cannot split my time policing clowns on the internet and also try to build something. Like,
yeah.
I have to expend that energy in the right places.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what? The hour just goes by so fast. Lord have
It
mercy.
does.
Ooh, okay. Final questions.
Uh-huh.
One, what is it, your pop-up dinner and because the idea of inviting people into your home and feeding them has always been something that has been on my to-do list. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I became obsessed with like building out a little tiny kitchen in my rental and just
Mm-hmm.
serving 2 or 3 people for dinner or lunch every single day. So it's always
Mm-hmm.
been an idea that I've loved.
Mm-hmm.
So like, where do you see that concept going in the next year? Because
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe like at some point next year we will all be in a place where we can, hopefully have hit a reset button on some
Mm-hmm.
things and been able to like pivot and rebuild and, oh, good Lord, and stop the bleeding. So where do you see
Mm-hmm.
that moving? And then where can people read your work and engage with your brand, engage with you? And then what are your plans for the blog going forward?
So my pop-up, as I said, it ran for most of 2018, 2019. And, I really wanted to focus on something that I could deliver on. And cooking for four people, be it 3 or 4 courses of plated or 3 or 4 courses of plated combined with family style food is definitely up my alley. Because it's my home, I did not, nor do I have well, the New York Times article kind of diminished that, right? But I did not want to advertise it on social media. I wanted to kind of regulate how much people come in my house because it's still my apartment, right? It's still my safe space. It's still where I rest
Exactly.
my head. Um,
Right.
so because of the blog, I had a mailing list and some of the really cool people that I've met on social media, and I would reach out to them and I would, kind of pick and choose. Or some people had the opportunity to just like buy the 4 spots for, a special occasion. So that was very cool where I was able to really curate it. If, they told me they didn't eat meat or anything, I would curate the dinners to kind of highlight ITEL food or highlight a dessert that was made with no dairy, no eggs, nothing like that, because it can be done, right? And people just be so wowed. Also, I am me. I'm not going to front on a plate. I like heavy stews. I like rice. I like, ground provisions. That's how we eat in the Caribbean. I have my story to tell on that is a real story. And that's what I'm going to cook. So when I cook these with these ingredients, I love the stories of some of my guests saying, well, I didn't eat that growing up. I didn't like it before stepping into your kitchen. It's because we kind of grew up you getting it in a defaulted way, either boiled and fried, right? So I like to kind of push the envelope with some ingredients that I'm accustomed to or the less desired, ingredients that people may, think that they don't like. I really love to highlight those. Where I see it going, even if things get back to normal, so to speak, the pop-ups would still be not as frequent, not as frequent as they once were, just because I want to kind of take like a deeper dive into food writing. Um,
Okay.
I think if it does come up, I think it'd be more leisurely where I am experimenting and testing more recipes for a bigger goal and not charging people to come and experience the food in that way. And then for my website, one of the other goals that I started working on was more consulting. So that is a goal. And in consulting, I mean more operations for small and medium food and beverage companies, where I would like to come in and kind of work on, the operational needs, the organizational needs, kind of brainstorm with them some of the admin things that they might not be thinking about, but it's definitely there. If we have to automate certain things, and also what's really big for me is training, because I want small and medium sized businesses, food and beverage businesses, to really look at their self if they are sole proprietor, or, they're working by themselves. So even if they have a crew of, 5 to 10 people, I want them to really look at it as a business, and not just the creative aspect of the business, but understand the operations and the business aspect. Not saying that people don't, but I would like to be an ally in their goal as well. So that was one of the things that I started working on. So I think it's just going to be an evolution of my services and the things that I'm passionate about. And I'm really passionate about kind of marrying both worlds, marrying my administrative professional background, marrying my time in corporate America, and marrying my understanding in the food and beverage industry. And that would be amazing. If I could do all of that from an island, girl, bye.
I love that. You like, so I don't have to be stateside to do any of this. This would be wonderful.
Yeah, so
So
it's just going to be like an evolution of the website, my services, and I guess once I get back on the ball of writing, I could just always plug that to the site. But there are some publications that I would really, really like to I love taste. I love Life and Time. I really, really love Life and Time. I love compound butter. I like the smaller ones. And I also have some ideas to kind of still get my name out in the Caribbean as well too, in that market. So we're going to see. We
All
are
right.
going to see.
All right. So for for people to be able to connect with you, those socials that you prefer people to follow you on. I know I have a handful because I don't like everybody on my personal one. And and then ways for people to get in contact with you if they want to reach out and are interested in your work or your writing, and or just have questions about what about connecting and maybe partnership.
Sure. So on Twitter and Instagram, my handle is at Chef Leigh-Ann, Leighann. And on Facebook, I'm not really on Facebook as much. But if I could get to it, I think I oh yeah, so on Facebook my name is Chef Leigh-Ann Martin on Facebook, but Instagram and Twitter, and then you could be, my information's there, that if you want to email me, you could. It's info@leighanmartin.com, and or slide up in my DM. Like, it's fine. We could, have something informal there, and we could always take it off of, social media and take it onto email where it's more formal, that type of thing. But I am open to not. This is going to sound bad.
No, it's gonna sound honest. Go ahead.
I'm not open to talking to everyone.
Protect your space, people. Protect your space.
But, everyone is able to weed these things out in, social media, that type of thing. So if anyone wants to seriously speak to me about an idea that they have, or if they need anything, by all means, please. But
absolutely, yeah. I'm a strong proponent for protecting your space and saying no.
But that's really
all
so
for it.
Not nice to say, right? Because
it's know what, and my thing is, I think that is one of those. It's one of those indoctrinations that come from that is really kind of a side effect of white supremacy, is to make people feel some type of like shame or some type of special type of way for saying no or for protecting their space. And it's just like, no, right. I don't have to accept everybody into my space. You don't. And I don't have to say yes to everything. You don't. But that idea.
And saying yes to everything isn't healthy, because you're going to.
No.
Yeah, it's not healthy.
It's true. And it's just like, for people to know that they can't always have access to you. It just, it teaches them how to value you. And for me, it's like, I think it's that, it's that extension. It's that long reach of white supremacy that says that you are not allowed to create boundaries for yourself.
Right.
And it's, because at some point we weren't. And so it was just like, I think it is definitely one of those offshoots, because, you got white dudes everywhere telling you no and blocking your calls. So, I mean, they don't feel no special type of way about doing that. I don't think the rest of us should either.
I'm intentional of the manner in which I respond to inquiries and people wanting to reach out to me. I'm also intentional with the times that I respond to these inquiries as well. I'm really safeguarding my feelings and my emotions in this rocky 2020. And but for the most part, I'll show people love. Please continue to show me love.
Right.
And just, don't be racist.
Exactly. I tell people, I'm like, for me to be generous in spirit doesn't necessarily mean I have no boundaries.
Yeah,
so,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, well, ma'am, thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for spending an hour or an hour and some change, chatting with me. And, I absolutely will definitely reconnect with you again. And as I expand into some video and maybe some other stuff, I will definitely be calling on you to maybe have another conversation more focused on like just food and not necessarily everything else. But thank you again.
Because that would be like a really good kind of like a continuation where we've kind of had the awkward first date. And
yes. And I'm one of those people, I love to talk to food people about food. There's something just energizing and invigorating about it. And the podcast has been great to help us like learn about the Black women working in these spaces and who they are. But like, for me, I'm definitely thinking through how to get back into like that very indulgent conversation just about food and about eating and dining and, the things that we love and how, what connects us all. Like the fact that all of us, have common ground in those spaces because we love food and we love hospitality and we love taking care of people. And I love, talking to other folks about that. So, so I'm definitely working through some ideas to get to that point. But
I'm sending all my Black Girl Magic your way. And I hope everything goes well. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. That is all for this week's episode. Thank you to our guests for spending some time with us, and thank you for listening in and for being a part of the Flyest Click in podcasting. If you love these conversations, be sure to download, subscribe, comment, and share. You can get further connected with the Afros and Knives community by following us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget to visit our website, afrosandknives.com, and sign up for our newsletter. Afros and Knives does this work only with the financial support of our Patreon community. To become a patron, please visit patreon.com/afrosandknives and pledge your monthly support. We are working on expanding into video as well as offering patron-only content this year, and you don't want to miss out. Until next week, may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be at peace.